Okay guys, theory of production. What do you mean by production? Production means creation or addition of utility. Basically, your definition you tell me. James Bates and J.R. Parkinson gave production is the organized activity of transforming resources into finished goods by using those resources. Yes, by using those resources. So production is creation or addition of utility. It is also, there should be an intention to exchange in the market. The intent should be exchanging in the market. It can be conversion of physical, that is tangible or intangible goods and services into output. Yes, but what does it not include? Things done out of love and affection does not form part of production. This much is clear, everyone? Okay. Now what are the various types of utilities? Form utility. What is form utility? Converting the form, physical form you are changing. For example, a log of wood is converted into a chair or a table. Next, place utility. Place utility either can be obtained by extraction from earth, which is of minerals, gold, etc., or transferring goods from a place where they give little or no satisfaction to a place where they give more satisfaction. So transport utility also becomes a part of place utility. Next, time utility. Making goods available in the time they are not generally available. Service utility. Usage of personal skills for providing services. Are these four kinds of utilities clear? Yes. What are factors of production? Capital and entrepreneurship. But what are factors of production? I know you know them. They are basically inputs which are utilized by various firms or companies to convert raw materials into finished goods. Now these factors of production are very much required for the production process. Yes, no? Okay, so first coming to land. What is land? Land is a free gift of nature, meaning the soil, the air, the water, the heat, lights, everything, this is already there. The natural vegetation of soil exists. Yes? Sometimes it's very difficult to say what is done by human effort and what was already available on the land. But what are the basic characteristics of land? Come on. Land is free gift of nature, okay? Land is, supply of land is space. Supply of land is space. Do not forget, supply of land is space. So you cannot change. Land is heterogeneous. No two pieces of land look alike. Are there a lot of characteristics or various ways in which you can use a land? Immobile. You cannot shift the piece of land from one place to another. Human effort is required. And permanent. Yeah, land is permanent and has indestructible powers. These are all related to land. Now labor. Who is a laborer? Chalo, labor. Any person where there is mental or physical exertion to produce goods and services in exchange of income. The purpose. See, anything done for free out of love and affection is not part of production. So if you are getting an income in exchange, then that person is called a laborer. Okay, now what are the characteristics of labor? First, it requires human effort. A person needs to be available to provide. Labor and laborer are not separate. The person needs to be available to provide services. Labor is active. Labor is perishable. Once a day of work is lost, that cannot come back, even if you're working extra hours or the next day. Once time lost is gone. Do they have poor bargaining power? Yes. Sometimes they cannot. Sometimes employer has more power over them. Do they have choice between hours of labor and hours of leisure? Hours of labor is the time they are working, be it the day work or the extra shifts or overtime, whatever. That is hours of labor. Hours of leisure, holidays, week offs, whatever they are taking when they are actually not working. Now, is supply of labor an exception to law of supply? Yes. Reason, you cannot increase or decrease the supply of labor immediately. Is it clear? Anything else we may miss? Yeah, labor is mobile. You can move from one place to another. You can shift the labor from one place to, and all labors are not productive. Depending on what kind of work they do, The hours they use, it is dependent. Everyone has their own skill set. Every labor has a different skill set. Even if all are chartered accountant, every chartered accountant is different from the other. Someone might be good at taxation, someone might be good at audit, someone might be good at projections. So every laborer is different. Okay, specialization basically. What can you call it? Specialization. Next, capital. Capital has been defined as what? Produced means of production or man-made instruments of production. These are not. What are primary factors of production? Land and labor. Secondary produced means of production is capital. Reason, you have to produce the capital, it is not already available. A human being exists, land exists, capital is created. Yes, capital is created. That's the reason it is produced means of production. Now what are the types of capital? What is fixed capital? It is in durable form for a long period of time. Durable shape means you're talking about physical assets. It's a broader term, which is a narrow term for this real capital. Here you're talking only about physical assets. Okay, next, circulating capital. This is a single use capital. Once it is put into use, you cannot reuse it again. Yes? Once it is used, like raw materials, once they are converted into finished goods, you can't make them raw materials again. Yes? Then human capital, skills, personal skills which are available, tangible capital, what can be seen by and felt by senses, and what is intangible capital, which cannot be seen. What are examples of intangible capital? Goodwill, patents, copyrights, etc. Individual capital, personal skill, social capital, what is used by the entire society as a whole. Yes? What is capital formation? Basically, you're trying to create capital asset. What is capital formation? Is nothing but you're transferring what into what? Savings into assets. So you're converting savings into assets by investing it in productive avenues. That's what is happening. So basically, I'm trying to say I'm not saving today. Just I'm not spending all the money which I earned today. All my savings are not going to be spent today. I'm going to save them for the future. The more I save for the future, the higher will be the productivity of my company. Is that right? Reason, because I'll have more. No, understand. I'll have more resources later, because once I invest it somewhere, I'm going to get returns on that investment, and the capital which is currently available will increase. Yes or no? Okay, what is the stages of capital formation? Savings. Savings mein first income, the individual needs to have income. Then willingness to save. After he saves, he needs to have concern for the future, and government makes compulsory saving schemes like PF, Provident Fund, etc. There are a lot of yojanas which government comes up with. Next, mobilization of savings, meaning saved money should be put into financial institutions or some kind of productive avenue. Some kind of productive avenue, may be it share market, be it mutual funds, be it some investment company you're giving it to, whatever it is. Then savings are the priority needs of the community, that all is fine. Then investment is nothing but converting real savings into real capital assets by investing it in productive avenues. That's it. And you have to bear the risk of that investment. The investment might be fruitful, might not be fruitful, but the intention of investing it into something is that you will get something in return. Entrepreneur. Who is an entrepreneur? You can be an organizer, a manager. Earlier, manager, organizer were all different people. But once it came under the head of entrepreneur, he takes care of everything from the inception to the end. The entire thing is taken care by the entrepreneur. Now, first, functions of an entrepreneur: initiating business, enterprise, and resource coordination. First, he perceives an opportunity, then exploits the opportunity by allocating resources. He coordinates land, labor, and capital in such a way that your efficiency increases and your productivity increases. Yes, that is the target. Next, risk bearing and uncertainty bearing. If there is a change in cost or there is a change in demand, what happens? It may hamper the way the organization is running. They may incur losses. Yes. Now, what are uncertainties and risks? Risks are something you know are there in the business. What kind of risks are there? There's theft, there's fire, there's burglary. These things you know. You can get yourself insured against. What are uncertainties? Something you do not know, like economic uncertainties, market is very volatile, all this is not in our hands. Like the demand keeps shifting, sudden change in demand which you not expected. So economic instability, all these are uncertainties you know nothing about. So you cannot insure yourself, but you need to know how to deal with the uncertainties. What did Frank Knight say? Profit is a reward for bearing uncertainties. Profit is a reward for bearing uncertainties. Given by Frank Knight. Now what are innovations? Some new devices or production process needs to be done. Improve technology every time. If you are an entrepreneur, you look for completely and all the time looking for better resources, better technology which should be happening. Then what happens if there is better technology? Does it increase efficiency? Yes. Does it increase productivity? Does it increase the profits? Then if innovation happens in one organization, they are earning great profits. If it's imitated by others, the profits start declining. So necessary technological progress should always keep on going. What does Schumpeter say? Task of an entrepreneur here, guys. The task of an entrepreneur is continuously to introduce new innovations. So we have two people here, Frank Knight and Schumpeter. And who gave the production definition? James Waite and J.R. Parkinson. Okay. Now, what are enterprise objectives, guys? First, organic objectives. Sorry. What are organic objectives? First, survival is necessary. So, surviving, how do you survive? When you are able to cover your costs. What are covering costs mean? At least your variable costs are covered. You are getting to a break-even position where your cost and your income are at least equal. Once you reach the stage of survival, then you look at growth and expansion. Then you consider growth and expansion and you try to get profits. Now, what are we talking about here? What did R.L. Marris talk about? Theory of firm. What is theory of firm based on? Manager is separate from? Is he talking about ownership and management? Guys, I am asking you again. Guys, do not forget, R.L. Marris' theory of firm assumes that the goal that the managers of a corporate firm set for themselves is to maximize the firm's balanced growth rate subject to managerial and financial constraints. So, whom is he talking about? Managers. How do they balance the growth? Okay. Next, what else is there here? Division of manager and ownership and management. Owners are concerned about profit, goodwill, what dividend they will get. And what are managers concerned about? Salary, incentives, benefits they give, the bigger office, all this there. Yes. What advantage, job security they have. So is ownership and management different? One is concerned with the utility function. I am asking. Yeah, so one is concerned about how the resources are utilized in the organization. Other is concerned about what happens, maximization of profits. What happens once those resources are utilized is their concern. What is happening within the organization is not the concern of the owners. Yes? Now, next, did we miss any point here? Did we finish? Then open your notebooks also. You have summaries, like reasons se diya maine summary. Chalo, open your notebooks also. If you miss any point, revise, because if these notes can be useful for you while you are studying. Yeah? Any point we missed in organic objectives? Did we cover all? Yes? Okay. What are economic objectives? Set price and output policy in such a way that there is profit maximization. You are setting price and output policy in such a way that there is profit maximization. Now, what are profits in terms of economics? Here you are talking about, there are two kinds of profits, economic profit and accounting profit. When you talk about accounting profit, you are talking about total revenue minus total cost, where total cost includes only explicit cost. But when you are talking about economic profit, you are talking about TR minus TC, where TC is explicit cost and implicit cost. Now, what is implicit cost? Now, the factors owned by entrepreneur and put in his own business. The money rewards he might get if he would have invested that money somewhere else, or salary foregone to work in his own company. All these are implicit cost. They don't form part of books of accounts, but they form parts of economic cost. Economic cost to find out economic profit. When total revenue is equal to total cost, zero economic profits. When total revenue is greater than total cost, super economic profits. Okay, this much is clear, everyone. Now, what else are we trying to talk about here? Is the number of people you have. You have a list of people. Do you have? I think in the books you've written now. What are the various economists you were talking about? First, you are talking about H.A. Simon. H.A. Simon argues that firms have a satisfying behavior and strive for profits that are satisfactory. Okay. Next, Baumer's theory of sales maximization holds that sales revenue maximization rather than profit maximization. So he is saying sales maximization is more important than profit maximization. If sales are done well, profit will follow. Yes, people never talk about their profit, but they talk about their turnover. That's what he is trying to say. Next, A, Burnley and GC means. What do they point out? Separation of ownership and management. Have you already discussed the separation of ownership and management? Owners are focused on profits, goodwill, dividends, reputation of the company or firm. What are managers? Salary, incentives, better office, many people working under them, the authority, the control. They are bothered about these things. Next, after that, next. What is Williamson talking about? Maximization of managerial utility function, which is important for managerial theory of firm's behavior. Okay, next. Sert and March, they suggested 4 more additional functional goals in addition to profit goal. In addition to profit goal is there, but in addition to that, what did Sert and March talk about? Production goal, inventory goal, sales goal and market share goal. Yeah, what are social objectives? First standard quality goods are made. No unadulterated goods, not adulterated goods. Then, not polluting the environment. Better employment opportunities they are creating and anti-social practices should be avoided. Next, human objectives. You are trying to create skilled labor, so you need to train them. They need to have a good working environment. They should be satisfied. They should be involved in the decision-making process which is related to them. Yes, they should be involved in that and they should be felt like a part of the company, not as an outsider. Anything else, their job should be interesting and more challenging. You should keep challenging them for them to get better at their job. Next, national objectives. Removing inequality, giving everybody equal opportunities, producing according to national priorities and country's upliftment as a whole. Okay. Now, enterprise constraints or limitations. How does enterprise actions for profit maximization may get constrained? How do they get constrained? First, lack of accurate information. On what? Regarding technology, inputs, prices, profits. If you do not have accurate information, you are not able to take decisions properly regarding the setting the price. If price is not set properly, you are not getting profits. So, it is an entire vicious circle. Then restrictions by state and central government. It can be even regarding mobility of capital or labor. If they are restricted to move capital and labor, then production process gets hampered. Yes. Then infrastructural inadequacies and supply bottlenecks. What does it mean? Your supply chain from the time of getting the raw materials to the time of production and sending it to the market, anywhere in between, if there is an issue, that means there is a delay in producing output. Delay in producing output, delay in revenue. Are you understanding the chain? So, is it a bottleneck issue? If it is somewhere, what kind of supply bottlenecks are seen? Transportation issues, something is spoiled, something is not working, machinery has got spoiled. Production? If you are assembling assembling the machinery and everything, you understand where there is a supply bottleneck. Next, changes in business and economic conditions means what? The location, the prices, price reduction, natural calamities, all these things are the changing, they are not constant, guys understand. Whenever there is a change, Does it impact the price? Does it impact the profits? Does it impact the customer preferences? Okay. Next, inflation and exchange rates. What does the inflation and exchange rate cause? They increase the cost. Once they increase the cost, that means you have to increase the price. If you sell at the same price, then profits are reduced. Either or. Yes. Next, physical limitations and skilled workforce may not be available. Yes. Anything else here? No? Okay. Enterprise problems. First, problems relating to objectives. What are the problems relating to objectives? Unable to meet the set objectives and conflicts between objectives. Yes? Sometimes your economic objective and your national objective may actually conflict each other. That's the thing. Next, problems relating to location and size of plant. First, location. Near the source of raw material or near the source of market. Second, size of plant. Short scale or large scale. Depending on the kind of production you want to do, which scale of plant you would choose. Next, problems relating to selecting and organizing physical facilities. Here you are thinking about what kind of production process needs to be done, what kind of equipment you need, what kind of personnel you need. Guys, understand? These are all questions when you are starting an organization. What type of equipment, what type of production process, what are the products you need, what are the inputs you would need. Yes, how will you place them, what are your resources, all these things you have to think before starting a business. Yes or no? Now you need to know where you're going to place which kind of resource. That's what you're going to talk about in organization. Next, problems relating to finance means what? Funds that are required to make these plans. We have made the plan. Now to execute those plans, we require money. Where will you get that funds from? Where will you invest your money? Where investment in which company or which resource will actually give you returns? You need to think about all this. Yes, what is your capital structure? What are your profits or investments? All these are considered here. Next, problems relating to organization structure. Meaning, we read about organization structure recently where you are talking about division of work and responsibility. How to hold a particular person responsible. You've divided the work so beautifully and the functions and departments in such a way that you know if there is a fault somewhere, who is responsible for that fault. Okay? Problems relating to marketing means what? First, you need to know your target audience. Target customer, you know how to market things to them. First, you decide who is your target audience and then you decide how to market. Now, what are the difficulties you find while you're marketing? 4 things, 4 P's. This do not forget, this is a question a lot of times. Product, promotion, price and place. What is product relating to? Variety, quality, design, features, brand name, packaging, etc. Promotion, methods of communicating it with the customer. How you're promoting your product. Price, discounts, allowances or credit terms. Cash discounts, whatever you're giving them. What are allowances again? Allowances. Post sale, post payment has happened. If there is a product flaw or there is an issue, you are allowing the customer to take back the refund. Take back the money they have paid. I given you Swiggy example. The food is stale, food is not good. You've already paid. You have got the person has left. But then when you complain to Swiggy saying the food was not good, do they refund certain amount or the voucher back? That's what we are talking about. Okay. Place. Policy regarding outlet. Where is your channel from where you're going to make that sale? Where are your outlets located? Yes, what are the 4 P's again? Price, promotion, product and place. Problems relating to legal formalities. What are these? Maintenance of government, taxes, records, accounts, various things which the government says is necessary. You have to maintain them. Yes? Problems relating to industrial relations. Misunderstanding and conflicts of interest between companies. Relating to worker with management, winning workers cooperation, discipline and organized labor. These are the issues relating to industrial relations. Okay. Now coming to production function. What is production function? Relationship between firm scarce resources and outputs that result from these resources. So it's a technological relationship between inputs and outputs. Inputs are independent variables. Output is the dependent variable. What are the assumptions of production function? Relationship between input and output is the same for a specified period of time. The state of technological knowledge remains constant. Whatever be the input combination, output is maximum. Is it clear? Yes? Now, Mr. Samuelson has given you the definition of production function, which says the relationship between the maximum amount of output that can be produced and input required to make that output. It is defined for a given state of technology, that is the maximum amount of output that can be produced with given quantities of input under a given state of technical knowledge. Is this clear? Now, what is the formula? Basically, Q is equal to function of L comma K, because we are considering somehow it's divided between labor and capital. What is the difference between short run and long run production function? What is the short run function? At least one factor remains fixed. That is under short run. Long run, all the factors can be varied. In the short run, increase and decrease of all the factors is not possible. In the long run, that only happens. Yes? In the short run, you use which law? Law of variable proportions. In the long run, law of returns to scale. Okay, great. Now, the law of variable proportions or the law of diminishing rate or एक और law है, क्या है? Law of returns to a variable input. Yes, first, here, understand, first you tell me what are the assumptions of variable proportions. Set of inputs is fixed, some of the inputs are fixed, ठीक है, उसके अलावा first, state of technology remains constant. It does not apply to places where inputs are taken in fixed proportion. Only physical inputs and outputs are considered, not the monetary value for economic stability. We are not talking about that. These are the assumptions of law of variability. Guys, do not get confused between the assumptions of production function and assumptions of law of variable proportions. They are different. What are the assumptions of production function again? State of technology is constant. The input and output ratio remains the same for a fixed period of time. Whatever be the input combination, output is maximum. Do not get confused between these two things. Okay, now here what are we considering in law of variable proportions? We are saying one input we have taken it as fixed, others are or one is variable and others are fixed. I am not asking the rule. What have we studied? One is variable and others are fixed. Guys, ऐसा मत करो यार. चलो. What is total product? Total product is the total output resulting from all efforts of all factors of production combined together. Yes, combined together. What is average product? Total product per unit of variable factors. Total product per unit of variable factor. What is marginal product? Addition made to total production by an additional unit of input. Additional unit of input. The formula is MPN is equal to TPN minus. This is clear? Everyone. What is the formula of average product? Total product by Q. Q is the number of units produced. Marginal product. MPN is equal to TPN minus 1. Now, when this is TP, AP, MP schedule, what are you seeing? What is happening to total product here? Total product is increasing, and then we'll discuss rate. We'll discuss later. Average product is declining continuously, and marginal product is increasing. Is it increasing? That's what I'm asking. It's increasing up to a certain point and then declining from there. Now, what is basically, we are talking about 3 stages of law of variable proportions. When I'm talking about 3 stages of law of variable proportions, stage 1, stage of increasing returns. What are you talking about here? Total product is increasing at an increasing rate, meaning it is increasing up to the point of inflection, where MP is maximum. So MP was increasing, it became maximum. At that point, TP is up to that point, TP is increasing at an increasing rate. AP is increasing. AP is also increasing, and then and after point of inflection, what happens to TP? Increasing, but at a diminishing rate. MP starts, AP continues to increase, and by the end of stage 1, MP is equal to AP. AP and MP intersect at one point. So MP becomes equal to AP. Reasons why there is increasing returns in the first stage. Come on. I want these points. As more variable factor are added to constant quantity of fixed factor, the FF is utilized more efficiently. The fixed factors is utilized more efficiently. Then productivity increases at a rapid rate because there is fuller utilization. Now what happens? There are 2 points here. What are the 2 points? Come on. Fixed factors, they are indivisible. Generally factors which are indivisible are fixed factors. You need to use them in the production process. You use it in such a way by adding variable factor, the utility or the rate at which you are utilizing fixed factor becomes more efficient. It becomes more efficient. And variable factor, as you go on adding variable factor, the efficiency of the variable factors increases. In this case, it was labor. Yes? So, as you keep adding, there is more specialization and division of labor. Because of that, you see increasing returns to scale. Phase 2. Stage of diminishing returns. What is happening here? Chalo graph mein dekhenge. Now, TP is still increasing at a diminishing rate. MP and AP both are falling. By the end of stage 2, MP becomes 0. AP continues to fall. In stage 1, MP was greater than AP or AP was greater than MP? MP was greater than AP. In stage 2, AP is greater than MP. Okay. And what else is happening here? Now, reason why there is diminishing. Now, we have utilized our fixed factors more than efficiently. We have overworked them. But still, are you getting positive returns? Is your total product still increasing? As a rational producer, you will produce in stage 2. Reason? Because you are going to utilize your resources to the complete efficiency possible. That is the reason you will produce in stage 2. Because you are utilizing your factors better. But they are being overworked. And the more variable factor you keep on adding, the output they produce after a point of time will start reducing. But in stage 2, is it reducing? But rate at which the total product is increasing is reducing. That, remember, there is a difference between the 2 terms. Okay. Now, stage 3. Stage of? What is happening in stage 3? TP starts falling, MP becomes negative, AP continues to fall. So, because MP becomes negative, TP starts falling. AP cannot be 0 because TP is never 0. Is it clear, everyone? Reason? Variable factors are not adding any more to the output. They are not adding to the output, they are creating a chaos, they are creating conflicts. There is issues of control, coordination in the company, the reason why total product starts falling. Is it clear, everybody? Law of variable proportions, if there is a question, you make a mistake, we will talk about it after your test. Chalo. Relationship between AP and MP. AP and MP both are derived from TP. When AP rises, MP is greater than AP. When AP is maximum, MP is equal to AP. And when AP falls, AP is greater than MP. Is this clear? Sure. Law of returns to scale. What do you mean by law of returns to scale? Meaning we are operating in the long run. We are changing the entire scale of production. You are saying all your factors are increased or decreased in the same proportion. They are increased or decreased in the same proportion. This do not forget at any cost that it's in the same proportion. Now, what is happening here in returns to scale? First, constant returns to scale. It's also called as linear homogeneous production function. Do not forget. What is constant returns to scale also called as? Linear homogeneous production function. What am I trying to say? That the increase in FOP or the increase in inputs is equal to the increase in output. So when your inputs are increasing, the same proportion your output is also increasing. Like here we have given an example. If there is one labor and one capital, 100 is the output. If there are two labor, two capital, 200 is the output. So same proportion. Then this is because economies and diseconomies of scale balance each other out. Next, increasing returns to scale. Percentage increase in output is greater than percentage increase in input. So the inputs, if you put in 2 units, you are getting 400 as the quantity, not 200. You are understanding? Yes. Reasons? Economies of scale, where you are talking about specialization, division of labor, better technology, better utilization of resources. All these result in increasing returns to scale. Next, decreasing returns to scale, percentage change in output less than percentage increase in input. So I am saying I am putting in the inputs, but the result is less than what it should be. The output is less than what it should be. Reason? Diseconomies of scale. Beyond a particular point, coordination becomes difficult, control becomes difficult, conflicts start. We are more dependent upon outside resources. Yeah, we are more dependent on various other companies rather than our own company. So all this becomes a problem, and that's where your diseconomies of scale, decreasing returns to scale arise. Is it clear? Chalo. Your favorite. Cobb-Douglas production function. Guys, Cobb-Douglas production function explains returns to scale. Please do not forget the first point. It's not explaining law of variable proportions. It is explaining returns to scale. Okay. Now, what did Cobb and Douglas do? Earlier, they thought they are only constant returns to scale. But it's not true. They found out that there are 3 kinds of returns to scale, whether increasing returns to scale, constant returns to scale, and decreasing returns. Now, when we considered this equation, what are the points? What is K? K is efficiency coefficient. L, labor employed. To the power A, output elasticity of labor. C, capital employed. B, output elasticity of capital. Are you clear with that much? Now, when A plus B is greater to 1, increasing returns to scale. That is, increase in output is more than proportionate to increase in input. A plus B is equal to 1, constant returns to scale. And decrease A plus B less than 1 is decreasing returns to scale. The contribution of labor is 3/4 and contribution of capital is 1/4. Do not forget. Okay, production optimization. What do you mean by the term production optimization? Come on. I am saying, that's isoquant, and I am not asking what isoquant line and isoquant, sir. I am asking you what is production optimization. I am saying the input combination is in such a way that I get maximum output with the help of isoquants and isocost line. Can I say that? My input combination, that is my factors of production, are combined in such a way at such a cost that the productivity is higher and the profit is more. Aim of every organization, that is what you are talking about when you are talking about production optimization. Now, when you talk about isoquants, what are isoquants? All combinations of inputs which give the same level of output. Satisfaction nahi bolna isme, please. All the combinations of inputs which give the same level of output. Producer is indifferent towards which output combination to choose. Now, in isoquants, are they similar to indifference curve? How? What are the similarities first? They slope downwards. Both of them slope downwards because of reason. Inverse relationship of the two combinations you are talking about. Then convex to the origin. Higher the isoquant, higher will be the output. Here it's not satisfaction, here it is output. So you can clearly distinguish, that's the difference, we'll do later. Another It should not touch either of axes because it's a combination. They do not intersect each other. Are these points clear? What are the differences? First, you can make out the output. When we say higher the isoquant, higher will be the level of output. We know the level of output. You cannot quantify satisfaction, you can quantify output. And the other difference is marginal rate of substitution, marginal rate of technical substitution. Yes, these are the only two differences. Is it clear, everyone? So all the combinations, see, I am saying producer is indifferent. How? Because any combination he chooses, he is getting the same desired level of output. Is it clear, everyone? And it's also called as equal product. Isoquant is also called as equal product curve, production indifference curve, or isoproduct curves. Again, it's also called as equal product curves, production indifference curves, and isoproduct curves. Okay? Now, next we are going to talk about ISO cost line. What is an ISO cost line? It's a budget line or budget constraint. Meaning I am saying two factors or the combination which I need, what is the outlay I have to purchase those two combinations? The outlay is nothing but the outlay cost which I have or the budget I have to purchase these two combinations. These are shown on the ISO cost line. So I am saying if there is a given output, how do I minimize the cost? Or if there is a given cost, how do I maximize the output? These are the two scenarios only. If there is a given output, minimize cost. If it's a given cost, maximize the output. Now what are we doing here? It's a combination of both isoquant and iso cost lines. Now here we have assumed the output is given. Given output, what would you do? Minimize the cost. Now given output is say 1000 units or whatever. Now what all is happening here? Level of output is decided say 1000 units. At equilibrium point what happens? IQ curve should be tangent to the iso cost line. Slope of IQ is equal to slope of iso cost. So when I am saying all these A, B, C, D, E are all lying on the same isoquant, understand? So all our producer is indifferent. Why? Because it's giving the same level of output. But when you mix iso cost line with it, you know the outlay. You want to minimize the cost is minimized at which point? Point C. So given output, minimize cost. The equilibrium point would be C. Reason? What is tangent to what? Isoquant is tangent to the iso cost line. Is it clear? So guys, revision of theory of cost. Now, what are accounting costs? Costs that are recorded in the books of accounts and costs that have already been incurred are accounting costs. They are also called as explicit costs. Okay. Then coming to economic costs. What do you think are economic costs? Explicit costs plus implicit costs. Explicit costs are accounting costs. Implicit costs. What are implicit costs? The normal return on money, capital invested by the entrepreneur himself in his own business, or the wages or a salary he could have earned elsewhere but he has put in his own business. The money rewards which he could have got by investing his money somewhere else but he is doing that in his own business, or salary we've discussed, and whatever resources he has bought with his own money instead of investing it somewhere else is all implicit cost. So implicit cost plus explicit cost is the total cost when you are calculating economic profit. So when I say economic profit is nothing but TR minus TC, where TC is explicit cost plus implicit cost. What is accounting profit? Total revenue minus total cost, but total cost only is explicit cost. Is that clear, everyone? Okay. What are outlay costs? Outlay costs are the actual expenditure which is incurred on labor, wages, capital, whatever. The actual expenditure incurred which has already been done. Yes? Opportunity cost. The next best alternative of a decision or course of action you have taken. The next best alternative to it. So you have foregone a certain opportunity to take this decision. The opportunity foregone is the opportunity cost, which that has costed you to come here. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay? Chalo. Direct or traceable costs, which can be directly or easily identifiable to a particular product, to a process, or to a plant. You can make out, if there is a cost, you can make out which department it belongs to or which person is to be held accountable for that cost. Okay? What are indirect costs? Which are not traceable to a particular plant. Basically, I am trying to tell you they are common costs. Some fixed costs are all common costs, say electricity charges. Now, you cannot directly relate it to, say, this is the production department, this is the sales department cost. It's an overhead cost which you cannot pinpoint as to which department is responsible for that cost. Okay? Incremental cost. The additional cost incurred for producing an additional unit of output. Any addition which is being made. To make that addition, the cost incurred is incremental cost. What are sunk costs? Costs which have already been incurred but cannot be recovered. Resource and development. Now understand, guys, why it is called a sunk cost. Because resource and development, for example, you have built a prototype, but you didn't build it according to what you were thinking it would be like. The prototype is not working according to your expectations. You're not making that product, but the research and development cost has come. You have incurred those costs whether you're making the product or not. That's why it is sunk cost. Okay? Historical cost and replacement cost. Historical cost is the original value of the asset you have purchased. What is replacement cost? The cost which you are incurring to replace a machinery. If other things remain the same, can replacement cost be higher than historical cost? Yes. Most scenarios it is. What are private costs and social costs? Private costs are which are directly incurred by the producer. Either on purchasing raw materials, finished goods, whatever it is, they are costs which are directly incurred for the purpose of production. Okay? And what are social costs? Which are available to you at free of cost. Atmosphere, air, light, these are all available to you. Yes, all these are social costs. And the costs, like when the pollution you spread out from your industry, the waste you leave out of on rivers, these costs are also included and become a part of social costs. Fixed costs, come on. Fixed costs are incurred irrespective of the level of output. Because even if the company is shut down, even then fixed costs are incurred. What kind of fixed costs? Rent, property taxes. Yes, if you have to pay a manager or a watchman to handle that factory when it is shut down, you have to pay somebody, right? So all these costs are going to be there. So these are all fixed costs. What is variable cost? The cost which is incurred in respect or with respect to the level of output produced. How much the level of output is produced, depending on that the cost is seen. Okay? So sometimes it is related to or proportionately changes with the level of output. Now what is cost function? It is the relationship between cost of the product and determinants of cost. Cost of the product is the dependent variable, that is the total cost or unit cost. What are independent variables? Price of the product, cost to make that product, technology used, and any other factor that is relevant in finding out the cost. All of them are independent variables. What is the dependent variable? Cost. How do you get the cost function? It is obtained from production function and market supply. Come on, guys. And is it a relationship between costs and inputs? No. Cost and output? Yes. It is a relationship between cost and output. Now short run total costs. Total cost, fixed cost and variable cost. Now what is total cost? Fixed cost plus variable cost. That is the total cost. Now what am I saying when I am saying total cost? The whole of the fixed cost and all the variable costs associated with the level of output produced is all total cost. Okay. Now what is fixed cost? Again, does not change with changes in output. Fixed cost always exists irrespective of the level of output. But whatever be the level of output, the fixed cost is fixed. Are you understanding this? When you're talking especially about short run, in short run only we are assuming there are fixed costs. In long run you can change it. Yes, in short run there are fixed costs, and these fixed costs, how does the graph look? It is parallel to the x-axis. Reason? The cost is same irrespective of the level of output. Okay. Variable costs. They are those costs which change with changes in output. What is the assumption? Variable cost changes linearly with changes in output. This is an assumption. It necessarily does not always happen. Variable cost is related to level of output, yes, but it's changing proportionately is our assumption. It does not happen always. Okay. How does the curve look? Upward sloping. When the output is 0, variable cost is 0. Remember that. When there is no output produced, means there is no production function which has started. Yes? If there is no production function which has started, then the variable cost is 0. What are semi-variable costs? They are neither perfectly variable nor perfectly fixed. There are mix of both. That's why they are called semi-variable costs. Example for this is electricity charges. A part of it is fixed irrespective of your usage. You have to pay that amount. Even if you are not using electricity, you pay that amount. So that's the fixed part, and variable part is on the basis of usage. So guys, remember the graph looks like this. Do not skip the graph while doing it. This is a graph of semi-variable cost. Yes? So what is, this is the fixed part of it, and above it is the variable part of it. Now stair-step fashion. Cost remains fixed up to certain level of output, jumps beyond that level and again becomes fixed. So up to a certain level of output the cost is fixed. After you cross that level of output it jumps and again becomes fixed. That is stair-step variable cost. Okay? Clear everyone? What is the example? I gave you foreman salary. Depending on the level of output, 100 units, 200 units, you need more and more foreman. Now, what's happening here? Total fixed cost, you know what is the graph? Parallel to x-axis. Irrespective of level of output, it's going to be parallel to x-axis. What is happening to variable cost? It increases with the respect of level of output. Now, initially at what rate is it increasing? Increases at a decreasing rate. Hey, cost hai. This is not revenue. Cost. Cost is initially increasing at a decreasing rate. Reason? Law of variable proportions. Because total product increases at a increasing rate. And later, what happens to total variable cost? Increases at a increasing rate. Later phase, the cost initially increases at a decreasing rate and later it increases at a increasing rate. Okay, so that is total variable cost. What is total cost? Total fixed cost plus total variable cost, TFC plus TVC. Now, when I say it is TFC plus TVC, the position of total cost is according to fixed cost, but the slope of total cost is according to the variable cost. Do not forget this. The positioning or the change of position is because of fixed cost and the slope of total cost is dependent on the slope of variable cost. Yes? Does total variable cost look like an inverted S? Yes? Okay. Sure. Anything else point which we have missed here? I think we've covered all. Chalo. Now average fixed cost, and we'll do a single graph, we'll revise and then we'll do. What is the average fixed cost? TFC by Q. Q is number of units produced. Now as output increases, average fixed cost falls because you are dividing it by number of units produced. So it is continuously going to fall but will never become 0 because fixed cost is always going to be there. Yes, it's downward sloping. It decreases throughout and can never be 0. But is it a U-shaped curve? No. The only average fixed cost curve is not a U-shaped curve. It's a downward sloping curve. AVC. AVC firstly is a U-shaped curve, and AVC is equal to TVC by Q, where Q is number of units produced. Now what is happening with AVC? Initially it is falling because of law of increasing returns. It reaches its minimum and increases because of law of diminishing returns. So AVC decreases, reaches its minimum and increases. ATC or AC, meaning average total cost or average cost, both are the same thing. Okay, it is also a U-shaped curve. ATC is equal to AFC plus AVC, or ATC is equal to TC by Q, where Q is number of units. Yes, so what is happening with ATC? ATC initially falls steeply, reaches its minimum and increases. Reason for it to fall, now come on. AFC is falling, AVC is also falling initially, so ATC falls. In the middle, AFC is falling at a faster rate than increase in AVC. That is why ATC continues to fall. Beyond that point, AVC is also falling. AVC is increasing at a faster rate than fall in AFC, because of which ATC or AC starts increasing. That is why it's a U-shaped curve. Now what is marginal cost? The additional cost incurred for producing an additional unit of output. Yes? Now what is the formula of MC? Either TCN minus TCN minus 1, or change in total cost by change in number of units produced. Is that much clear? Is it independent of fixed cost? Yes. Because it is incurred only when there is a level of output. So meaning it's not related to fixed cost. Marginal cost is independent of. Is marginal cost also a U-shaped curve? Yes. Marginal cost first declines, reaches minimum and increases. Reason? Law of variable proportion. And what happens to marginal product? It increases, reaches its maximum and declines. So are you understanding both the terms? Yes? Now relationship between average cost and marginal cost. When average cost falls, AC is greater than MC. So I am saying when average cost falls, the average cost curve, wait, we'll look at the curve. What is happening here? When AC is falling, can you see this is the ATC curve? Yes, this is falling. Where is MC? Here. So is AC is greater than MC. What happens when AC increases, sorry? MC is greater than ATC. And when AC is at its minimum, MC curve cuts AC curve from below. Yes? Okay. So AFC is TFC by Q, AVC is TVC by Q. There is no confusion in that. Guys, are you sure of these? Sure. Now long run average cost curve. Firstly, what is long run? What happens in the long run? All inputs are varied. It is basically changing the scale of production. So I am saying long run is a planning horizon. You plan the level of output, make appropriate plant and run a short run average cost curve. Is it right? So I am saying I plan in the long run and operate in the short run. Okay? So I am making the plans, making the adjustments, changing the scale either to big or small depending on the level of output. I change the scale in the long run, but I am operating in the short run only. Okay? I am operating in the short run only. Now when you talk about long run average cost curve. Now what is a long run average cost curve? First it depicts the relationship between output and and long run cost of production. Okay. Now when we see these two graphs, first let us discuss this one. You can see three short run average cost curves. Now when you're understanding that three short run average cost curves, depending on the level of output, you will choose which average cost curve to work on. Yes. Now again we'll do this. On OA level of output, which cost curve would you choose? SAC1. Why? Because the cost is lower than this. AL is lesser than AH. That's the reason you choose SAC1. For OB level of output, SAC1 or SAC2? The reason of choosing SAC1 is because SAC1 is at a minimum point where you can get maximum or optimum output. Technically, SAC2 is falling, but because you are using your resources better and optimizing entire thing, that is why you choose SAC1 over SAC2. In case of OC, SAC2. So now you know how you choose which plant you need to make the production on. Now when you come to the second part of it, now when I am saying a firm has a choice that the plant can be varied into infinite gradations. A huge plant can be made into smaller plants and say they are infinite gradations. Now for each plant I have a short run average cost curve. Understand what I am trying to say? For each plant there is a SAC. That's why they are infinite gradations. Now once that SAC is made, according to the level of output, I can choose which SAC to make the production on. Which SAC would I use to make the or reach that level of output? Now how does the LAC curve look? It looks like a board shape. It is called the planning curve or an envelope curve because it envelops all the SACs. Okay, so it's called a planning curve or a envelope curve. Now what is happening here? As LAC is falling, reason for LAC to fall? Economies of scale or increasing returns to scale. As the level of output is increased, you enjoy certain economies of scale relating to specialization, division of labor, better coordination and control, better technology. You enjoy economies of scale. That is the reason your long run average cost curve falls. Okay? And reason for it to increase? Decreasing returns to scale which are caused by diseconomies of scale. But when it is the lowest, your LAC is equal to? Yes or no? SAC, all the SACs are tangent to LAC. LAC is tangent to all the SACs, yes or no? But is it tangent to all the SACs at minimum point? For when the LAC curve is falling, it is tangent to the falling portions. When LAC is increasing, it is tangent to the increasing portion. When LAC is minimum, it is properly tangent to the minimum point of that SAC. In this case, it is SAC 4. So this at this place, it is optimum output, optimum cost. Yes, no? Is it clear? So the cost is optimum and output is also optimum. So I am saying, if I am producing less than OQ units, this is the OQ units, yes? This is the optimum point. If I am producing less than OQ units, I am constructing a relevant plant. But what am I not doing? I am not using my resources to optimum capacity. Yes? So your minimum average cost of production can still go lower, but you are not able to do that. Because they are all tangent to falling portions, but below falling portions will be your minimum point. This. Yes? Are you understanding? Now, after you do that, and if your output is more than OQ, overutilization of resources. So it's using beyond optimum capacity or lesser. The optimum capacity is on SAC 4. Is that much clear? Now we've discussed what all is happening with long run average cost curve. It is a board shaped curve. It is also a U shaped curve. Yes? It envelopes all the SACs. So it's called an envelope curve. It works on a planning horizon. So it is called a planning curve because you plan for the scale of production you need to make. So it's a planning curve. Economies and diseconomies of scale set in when LAC curve is falling. Economies of scale. When LAC is increasing, diseconomies of scale. Clear? Now, economies and diseconomies of scale. What is this about? First, external and internal diseconomies. What are internal economies and diseconomies? Which accrues to the firm. When the firm increases its level of output, it is wanting to increase the level of output with the assumption that my cost of production per unit will decline. That is the purpose. Then I will make more profits. When I am doing that, when I enter new technology and stuff, I am going to enjoy increasing returns to scale. Now, what are the kinds? Technical economies and diseconomies. What are technical economies and diseconomies? You are using superior techniques. Because of using superior techniques, there is more efficient use of machinery. Once the machinery is utilized properly, then higher degree of productivity, greater efficiency, greater effectiveness, ultimately higher level of output, cost of production is reduced. When there are large firms who do everything in-house, so their dependency on other firms also decreases. Yes? Okay. Next. And what is the reason for diseconomies? Difficulty in management, coordination and control. Managerial economies and diseconomies. Meaning division of management. The management should be able to be divided and subdivided in such a way that there is a proper channel. You can hold people accountable. See, various departments, production, sales, whatever departments, accounting, finance, all these departments are divided and subdivided. Once they are divided and subdivided, can you expect better efficiency, productivity, specialization in personnel? When they are specialized, they work better, their lower employees also work better. Okay? So, these are all the reasons that better work is done. That is in the managerial economies. What is managerial diseconomies? Difficulty in communication and management. Because in difficulty, there is a delay in decision making, and once there is a delay in decision making, you implement the decision also later. Now, all this is causing diseconomies. Everything is increasing, so suddenly the cost will start rising instead of falling. Okay? So, you will see diseconomies of scale. Next, commercial economies and diseconomies. What are commercial economies? So, you are saying if I want greater output, my input cost should be less. When will that happen? When you are ordering things in bulk. When you are making bulk orders, because you are increasing your level of output, you will need more number of inputs. Yes? If you need more number of inputs, then bulk orders, cost of production goes down. Cost of production goes down, productivity increases, profits increase. It is more profitable. And advertisement costs reduce per unit, meaning when your level of output has increased and advertisement cost is the same, per unit will decrease. Yes or no? Okay. What are diseconomies? The advertisement cost or marketing cost will increase more than proportionately to the level of output after a certain point of time. Financial economies and diseconomies. What does this mean? You can get additional capital or money you can raise easily because of your goodwill, because of the kind of industry you are. The investors who are investing in your company have better confidence that you will do well. Yes? So, you get finance very easily. Diseconomies, your dependency on other kind of finances instead of your own finance is more. So, dependency increases. So, that will cost you eventually. Risk-bearing economies and diseconomies. Meaning, first you are able to manage the economic up and downs in case of economies. Diseconomies you are not able to manage them. What are economic ups and downs? Come on. Market volatility, change in consumer tastes and preferences, future expectation of prices, all these cause changes in economy. Yes? Now, external economies and diseconomies. What does external economies mean? That when there is an expansion of an industry, the firms in that industry, all of them profit from this. All the firms under that industry profit from external economies. Now what are external? First, cheaper raw materials and capital equipment. Meaning, cheaper raw materials meaning, as your level of output is increasing, the raw materials are available at a cheaper rate. Then, capital equipment, output is increasing, more equipment is required. More equipment may be available at cheaper prices because there is so much competition from that industry as well. Once all of this is done, everything is available at lower cost. What happens to your cost of production? Decreases. Productivity? Ultimately, you're gaining profits. Technological external economies. Better or new technical knowledge. Once that comes, what happens to the productivity? Better production process, improved technology. Then, again, reduces your cost of production, increases your productivity. Next is development of skilled labor. Training and specializing people, giving them proper skills they require, better coordination among them, and they have a better understanding of the surroundings. Whatever new training processes you start, you make them understand that this is the updated technology and how to use it. Once all that is done and they do their work, the productivity increases. They are able to do things in a faster way. As they do it faster, ultimately your cost of production falls, productivity increases. That's the target. Growth of ancillary industries. What are ancillary industries? Which make the inputs, yeah, which make the inputs, the small inputs you are talking about. Now, growth of ancillary industries meaning as your demand for input increases, these ancillary industries increase. Because there is competition among them, you get everything at a lower price. And what about transport and this network? Where did I talk about transport, better transportation and marketing network? Because new firms enter, even transportation is an ancillary industry. So that is also growing. What does information dissemination mean? Information, the communication network gets better. It is spread easily. Dissemination means spreading or putting the word out. Okay. Next, last one. Economies of information. Information is easily and cheaply available. Now, external diseconomies. What are they? Demand for input increases, but if the input is short in supply, the price rises of those inputs, cost of production rises. Ultimately, what will cost rise? Pollution cost, transportation cost, marketing cost, and government restrictions. All these increase. So these are external diseconomies.